Really short under my machine. There you go. Do I need a stool? Alright, and then the, like...
Yeah, here's the soapbox. Here's a little...
over here. You know, there you go. You got it. Well, isn't this embarrassing? Alright, welcome to Make.Do's channel. My name's Joe.
And I'm Madison. Yep.
We're supposed to create content for YouTube that's kind of evergreen, but right now, what's happening in the world is a little crazy. So if you're watching this video in the future, just know we're in the middle of COVID-19. And so as part of that, people are stuck at home and we think it's possible you have a sewing machine that's still in the box because you're scared of it, don't know how to use it, you used it once and you got a rat's nest on the bottom and you don't know what to do, and so it's back in the box, hiding in the closet. We want to demystify your sewing machine for you. We have two different, kind of a newer version, a very older version, and we're just gonna show you how to take it out of the box, how to set it up, and how to use it for the indefinite amount of weeks that we are now quarantined. So join us over at the table and we're gonna unbox, well, uncase, we'll pretend it was in a box. We will unbox these machines and walk you through from very start to very finish to get ready to sew, okay? Let's go. We just filmed how to use these machines and realized that maybe we didn't show you like the names of the parts, the anatomy of the machine. So real quickly now, just touch all the parts of the machine so you know what we're talking about when we refer to things. Everyone touch your hand wheel. Everyone touch your presser foot. Everyone touch your foot pedal. The presser foot on both of these machines moves up and down through a lever back here. We didn't, you won't be able to see that in what we recorded. I think that's it. Okay, so we've got everything out of the box. We're sitting at the table, but we're not quite sure what to do next. So the first thing you're gonna do is grab your foot pedal, and it will have an end that does not look like it goes into a wall. This end goes into your machine. So on this machine, it goes in right here. And then the other end plugs in. We already did that. So just imagine, you know how to do that. Just plug it in, okay. So now that it's plugged in, I can turn it on. And the power switch here was over here on the side just above where I plugged it in. Okay. Real quick, we'll go over the pieces that might come with your machine that you think, I don't know what I need and I don't know what I don't need. So my presser foot is already on my machine here. The one I'm using looks like this, but I also, in my drawer here, the machine came with a bunch of other feet and other, like this foot and other things that I think, what am I supposed to do with this foot? Don't worry, we don't need it right now. So all we need now is the foot that looks similar to this, a bobbin. My bobbins are clear. Madison's bobbins will look different. This piece that is going to hold my thread onto the spool. And I think that's it. I think that's all I need right now to get started from what would already be in my machine. I'm gonna put this on the floor because that's where it belongs. Want to start with a fresh needle. If you've been having issues sewing on your machine, it could be that you have a needle that has been in your machine since your grandmother gave it to you and you just need a new needle. So the front has this little colored like dot on it, and that lets us know it coordinates with what kind and size and all that. And the back is flat. So we want the back to go, the flat side goes towards the back. I'm gonna push it up as far as it'll go. Can't go any further. And then now I'm tightening the screw right here. Okay. We're going to go ahead and wind a bobbin. So I have my thread here. This is a big old spool of thread. Yours might not be this big, doesn't matter. So I have always threaded my machine coming across the top like toilet paper. But recently, I have seen people saying it should come across the bottom, like you would not do toilet paper. So this has always worked for me. I would say just do it one way, and if you have problems, switch it. And then this spool holder is gonna go on the outside of that. In this machine, everything is labeled, which is one of the things that is really great about these machines. For our bobbin, we are only concerned with this number 1 and with this screw guy thing here. So I'm gonna bring this up under that. There was a little click, I don't know if you heard it. And then our pattern here is showing us to come from the right around our tension screw and over the top. This is typical of every machine I've used. It is kind of like a cursive J. You'll come from the right, around the top, and over. I'm gonna take my bobbin, and we can see a little hole. There's actually one on both sides, so there's not a top or a bottom. But I'm gonna take my thread and I'm gonna go from the center to that hole and pull out my slack. So now I'll set this here, push this over to engage my bobbin winder and disengage my needle. So I'm gonna hold my thread up, not down. I'm gonna hold it straight up, nice and tight, and then so when the bobbin won't go anymore, you know it's full. So now we can slide it over, cut it, and put it in our machine. In this machine, it's a top loading bobbin, so that means we can see it. We're loading it in from the top. So I'm gonna take the bobbin case cover off, and I want to insert the bobbin with the thread unwinding clockwise. So the thread is coming over the top on the left side. This would be incorrect when the thread is hanging down on the right side, okay? So it's gonna set right on the top here. And then there's a little notch down here at the bottom, and that is where my thread is gonna go down into that notch. I'm gonna bring it up and over to the side, and then I'm just gonna let it hang out there while I thread the top of the machine. Still have it wrapped around this tension screw for winding my bobbin, and I don't need that, so I'm gonna undo that part, but I am still gonna leave it behind number 1 here. This machine is numbered. Even if your machine is a little different than this, they all go through the same pattern. So even when Madison walks us through her machine from the 70s, it's gonna have the same pattern even though it looks a little bit different. So we've gone under that first number 1. I'm gonna come back behind this for 2. All of this is just holding tension. Oh, one thing that I noticed I need to change. My presser foot is down. Inside here, if we were to zoom in and look really close, you would see what's called tension discs. And it's these silver discs that as the needle moves up and down, they move to maintain tension on your machine. So I want to raise my presser foot, and I'm doing that from the back, so that those tension discs open. As I thread my machine, the thread can slide in where it needs to. All right, so I have gone behind this lever up here. I'm going down here. I'm gonna come up and around. Now this is called, I think it's called the take up lever, the uptake lever. I don't know, sometimes it's down. If you don't see it, roll your hand wheel over here until this pops back up. And you wanna wrap this from the right around the back to the left. And you wanna make sure that it slides down into, there's a little notch in there on my machine, and I'm gonna make sure it's all the way down in there. I'm gonna come down. I have a little metal piece here. This might look different on every machine too. Mine opens on the right, so I'm gonna come back behind on the right. And then in front of my needle, there's another little bar that is open on the right. So I hold it here to get a little bit of tension, and I'm gonna go behind that. And then there we go. Now, this machine has a needle threader. I have mixed feelings. Sometimes a needle threader can be really awesome because you're not having to get in there and find the eye of the needle and finagle the thread through it. But sometimes they can be more frustrating than they are easy. And also your machine might not have a needle threader. So we're gonna ignore the fact that this machine has a needle threader, and we are gonna thread our needle the old-fashioned way with our fingers and our eyeballs. The main thing is you thread the needle from the front straight through to the back. When I pull it through, I just wanna make sure it doesn't get twisted, that the thread is going straight through to the back, that it doesn't get twisted around my needle. So if you have trouble seeing, you can grab a piece of paper, a little folded up piece of cardboard, and you can stick it back behind your needle and see how that helps you just be able to see the needle a little bit better. So if you're having trouble threading the needle, try that and see if putting something behind it helps your eyes be able to see the eye of the needle. Now that we have our top thread threaded, our bobbin thread is in the bobbin case, but our string is still down here. We need to bring it up to where the top thread is. So I'm gonna hang on to my top thread. I'm gonna roll my hand wheel over here toward me. It feels counterintuitive, but always roll your hand wheel toward you. So I'm gonna roll and I'm gonna watch my lever there, and I'm gonna roll it all the way down and all the way until my lever comes back up. When my lever is back at the top, now my bobbin thread is at the top as well, and I can grab a pair of scissors or a pin and bring it around to the top. Now I can put my bobbin case lid back on. I'm gonna put all my threads on the bottom and to the back, and there you go. Your machine has been threaded. So now that we're threaded, let's talk about the rest of what you might see on your machine that could be a little scary. The stuff you need to pay attention to right now as a beginner, and the stuff that you don't need to worry about. On the far left here, I have my tension dial. Easiest way to kind of wrap your mind around tension is that it is a tug of war between your top thread and your bobbin thread. And ideally, that tug of war stays even. Nobody is winning one way or the other. You don't need to mess with your tension unless you're having problems that aren't fixed by rethreading or changing a needle or simple things like that. You normally don't need to mess with this as a beginner. Next to my tension knob, I have my needle position. So when I move this, if you watch the needle, when I move it here, my needle's gonna scoot over. Now my needle's in the center. Now my needle's on the right. Next to my needle position, I have width. And as I move my width, if you watch my needle again, it will move one way and back to the center. Width only matters when we are using a zigzag stitch, a stitch that has width to it. Most of our regular all of our straight stitches have no width. They just stitch straight down. So you don't need to worry about width right now either. Over here, length, this is how long my stitches are. We don't want to take teeny tiny stitches because then if you mess up and have to take stuff out, that's a lot of seam ripping that you have to do. We also don't want to take really big stitches because that's not going to hold our project together. So a good place to set this for now and leave it is at 2.5. All right, my bottom thing down here is my stitch selector. So this machine has about, 23 stitches. I probably have only used 3 of them. You don't need to know how to do all of this yet or what the different colors are. All we're concerned about is making sure we're on the straight stitch right now. So on this machine, looks like this. Okay, I think we know enough to test it out. Before we start on any real projects, we want to make sure that everything is just set up, running smooth. So I grab some scrap fabric. I'm gonna slide it under my presser foot, drop the presser foot. I want to make sure that I'm holding my 2 threads. So I've got my top thread and my bobbin thread. I'm holding it nice and tight. I'm gonna roll my hand wheel toward me, 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3. If we really want to lock those in, we can use the reverse lever here to do a back stitch. So on this machine, when I hold it down, it will sew backwards. And then I can release that and sew down. There are all kinds of lines over here that will give you different seam allowances. Typically, the easiest thing for me to do is just follow the edge of the presser foot. So unless something like a clothing pattern says, sew with a 3/8 seam allowance, use a 5/8 seam allowance, I don't mess with any of this. I just follow here. And a back stitch at the end. I'm gonna roll my hand wheel toward me until my thread is up, raise my presser foot, pull my fabric off to the side. I'm gonna drop my presser foot and use my thread cutter on the side of the machine here, but you could also grab scissors. And then that looks pretty good.
My sewing machine is from the 70s. We're gonna walk you through some of the same things that Joe has walked us through, but there are gonna be some slight differences. Most of it is gonna be the same, but the first thing that we wanna talk about is winding a bobbin. Her machine has a top loading bobbin. Ours is right here in this little door. So you'll want to pop that open, and then inside is the bobbin case. So there's a little lever on here. So we're gonna hold that open and pull it out, all right? And ours is empty. It does not have a bobbin in it. So we're gonna have to get a bobbin and wind it. The bobbins that came with my sewing machine are metal. So there is on both sides like a little slit. That's where we're going to thread our thread through. Grab a spool of thread and just put it right there, right on top. I'm going to wrap it around this front and then come right around the back, just like that. And that's gonna create our tension that we need. The thread through the hole of my bobbin. So now that I have my bobbin threaded, I'm gonna put it on. And this little lever right here needs to be pushed in so that it will tell my machine, hey, we're winding a bobbin. Over here on the hand wheel, there is a second wheel. So I'm going to twist my hand wheel forward and then the inner wheel backwards. That will disengage this sort of like needle post right here and keep it from going up and down. With Joe's machine, you needed the bobbin to unwind this way. That is not the way we need it to unwind with this machine. Instead, we want it to hang over the right, like this. My bobbin case, and I'm gonna put my bobbin into it with the thread on the right side. You'll notice that on the right side of your bobbin case, you have this like little clamp thingy. That's how you know that you have it on the right side. And then there's a slit here, and I'm going to take that thread, bring it up through the slit, and then there should be a nice little click, and your thread will be coming up through that way. And I like to check to make sure that I have it in there the right way. It should spin to the right. That's how I know I have it in correctly. A handy tip, when you hold this lever like this, your bobbin's not gonna fall out. So you can hold it and like aim it directly in there. Otherwise, if you don't have that bobbin in there, that lever open, your bobbin will just fall out. Holding it by the lever, you're gonna place that inside our machine. I do not have handy dandy numbers. This is where your manual will be very helpful, but it's very similar to Joe's machine. Her metal clip was on top. Mine is at the back. So I'm going to put my thread through that clip, and then there is a sort of groove right here. I'm going to place my thread through that groove to the left of a little metal disc that is right here. I'm gonna bring it down, and there's this another metal hook here. So down like this. And I'm gonna move my hand wheel so that this little lever is all the way to the top. And I'm gonna thread it through here, through the notch into this little hole. And then down here near my needle, there's a little hook. It opens up to the left. So I'm gonna put it in through there. And now our machine is threaded. Now we gotta thread the needle. There we go, all the way through, like that. So now that we have our needle threaded, we need to pull that bobbin thread up. So I'm going to hold my top thread. Go through once. Oh, and the loop is right there. So I will take some scissors, run it under. So now our 2 threads have met. I'm gonna close my case just like that. Take my 2 pieces of thread, put it behind, and now we're ready to test it out. On my machine, I have all the same functions that Joe's does. They're just in different places. The first knob that Joe talked about was the tension one. Mine is up here. It's a little white knob. If I need my top needle thread to have more tension, I scoot my wheel over to the plus sign. If I need less, then you scoot it over to the minus sign that's over there. This lever right here is where I change what kind of stitch I use. In order to do that, I bring the lever over to the side, and then I can bring it up to whatever number corresponds to the stitch that I want. It has 2 knobs, one on top of the other. This bottom one controls my stitch width. So this is if I'm doing a zigzag stitch, anything with width, this is what I'm going to change. The knob on top changes my needle position. Move my knob over to the left, it will move to the left. If I move it to the right, my needle will move over to the right. This knob right here is specifically for buttonholes. So if you're a beginner, don't worry about this knob. Just make sure it's at the 0. This knob down here tells us about the stitch length, and it is also our reverse button. So right now I have it at around 2.5, 3. In order to do a back stitch, you need to lift up on this. This is how you'll put your machine in reverse, and you'll have to hold it there. Once you're finished back stitching, you can let it go and it will go back to the stitch length that you were using. This is the feed dog knob. It allows you to drop your feed dog so that you can do different sorts of things like free motion quilting and things like that. It just takes these little rough pieces, the feed dogs, and hides them for you. So those are all the knobs you need to know to start working on your grandma's sewing machine.
So hopefully that helps you feel a little bit more confident, a little bit less terrified of this machine that's really pretty straightforward, as long as it does what you want. Sometimes when you have issues, it seems like it's really complicated, or like it's that you have messed something up, but usually there's something simple. Maybe we will do a future video that is common problems that you might run into, especially as a beginner. So if you have any problems that you are running into, leave them in the comments below so that we will know what kind of issues to address for you. And until then, happy quarantine sewing, y'all.
Now everyone, this is gonna make it in the bloopers and help it out. Let me tell you about my knobs. The first knob, it has 2 knobs. The knob on top, this knob right here, just like that. Don't worry about this knob.
Popped in the head by the bobbin.
This knob down here,
Up goes the weasel. Know your knobs.
know your knobs. Hashtag know your knobs.